Welcome back. And let's look now at the Made By section on Etsy's new creativity standards, which they just released a couple days ago. This is July of 2024. And I did mention this in the previous video, but over the next few months, they're going to be tweaking this. They're going to be adjusting things. Things are going to be changing. They're going to be adding new features. They're going to be adding some filters. They said that for seller or for buyers. This is not a static process. So as they change things, I will be adding more videos to this playlist. So keep an eye back. You might want to subscribe. I don't know. Up to you. Okay, so let me share my screen so that I can show you this policy. This is the handmade. They don't even use the word handmade anymore. Let me take that out of my vocabulary. Okay. This is the made by a seller. And there are 4 categories on Etsy now of things that you can sell. Made by a seller, designed by a seller, handpicked by a seller, and sourced by a seller. So this is the made by a seller category. Let's look at this in depth. Okay. Made by a seller are physical items made by a seller by hand or using personal or computerized tools. Okay, so if you make something by hand, I make all my products by hand. I print them out and then I cut them out with my knife. I have a little X-Acto and I cut them out. I'm making those by hand from raw materials. Okay. If you make jewelry and you're stringing beads, you're making that by hand. Okay, so that would be the first part of this process. Now, when you go into your listing in the listing manager, I'll do a separate video of some listing options, but when you go into the listing manager, when you're listing something new or when you're editing it, in the core details, if you click on details at the top of the listing manager on desktop, it'll take you down to the details section. Click on change. That'll open up a new menu that has different options for you. Within those options, there are all of these, and you're going to have to choose some of these to describe what the handmade process is, okay? Etsy does not use the word handmade anymore. Apparently, like on this page, I could not find the word handmade once, okay? So that's very telling, like I said in my previous video, but these are the things that are considered made by a seller that would go in this category. And on Etsy, on the listing page, it shows up under the description. It'll say made by, and then your shop name. Okay, so the first thing is handcrafted items, items crafted entirely by hand, including using handheld or hand-guided tools like a sewing machine or table saw from raw or basic craft materials. Now, this is throwing people off a lot. The raw materials thing, don't overthink this. I would not overthink this, okay? Because it all is handmade. If you're making something by hand, like I said, you're stringing beads. You don't have to make the beads. You don't have to make the wires, okay? It's not, you don't have to overthink this. If it's a raw material and you're making it into something else, if you're taking something and you're making it into something else, when you're done, it serves a different purpose than the original product, then that's a raw material that you have handcrafted into something else. Okay, and the examples of that are a wooden chair built by hand with a power saw and sander, or ceramic pottery thrown on a wheel. So in those examples, you're taking wood, you're using a power tool set of saw and sander, and you're making a chair. Okay, so it starts out as wood, it ends up as a chair. You did it with your hands and with tools. That's considered made by a seller. That's handcrafted items. Okay, same thing with ceramic pottery thrown on a wheel. That's a handcrafted item. Also in the made by a seller category are hand altered items. Now, this is where it gets a little funky for some people, but I think that sometimes you're picking at the minutia and you really don't need to do that. So commercially available base items that a seller altered using specialized handcrafting skills. And the example is hand embroidering flowers onto a tote bag, reupholstering a piece of furniture with new fabric. So in both of those examples, you're taking something that someone else made, like the tote bag or the chair, and then you're taking raw materials, which would be the embroidery floss or the fabric, and you are putting those raw materials onto this commercially available thing, and you're making a decoration. You're basically redoing it. You're improving it, call it enhancing it, improving it, whatever. You're changing it so that it still has the same function, but because of the raw materials that you have added to it, it is altered. So that's hand altered items. That goes under the made by a seller category. And these are things that you're going to see when you open up your listing manager, like I said, and you go into that detail section, you're going to be able to choose these. Now, I saw someone in the Etsy forums was confused because she said that she designs clothing. And I think this is a really good example. She designs clothing and sends it to a factory to be made, but it's not commercially available. She doesn't sell the clothing. They then send the clothing back to her, and then she embroiders on the clothing that she has designed. And she's like, is this something that I should put hand altered or handcrafted? Is it hand assembled? Because the commercially available part was throwing her. Honestly, I would not overthink this. I would put it under hand altered. And because a handcrafted means that you made the whole thing, you sewed the clothing and then you embroidered it. I would just say, I would put that under hand altered and then describe that you design everything in the description. I don't think you need to overthink this too much. And I know that people are going to get stuck on the fine points like that, but there's going to be a lot of overlap and you just have to choose the best category that fits and makes the most sense. Okay. Hand assembled items is the next piece of this. Commercially available, and this, again, this is getting weird. Commercially available supplies or components that a seller attached together or combined by hand to create a unique end product. That would be things like jewelry, okay? And that's the example they give, using jewelry making tools to attach charms to a necklace chain, sewing patches onto a denim jacket. So the commercially available patches and the commercially available denim jacket, the commercially available jewelry components, the commercially available tools that you use to put them together. You're just combining commercially available. You go to the store, you buy beads, you buy the wires, you put them together to make something different. That's hand assembled. Okay. Again, don't overthink this, but there doesn't, the one thing about this, there doesn't seem to be a lot of like defining lines of what causes something to be hand altered and what is something that is disqualified from being sold, because what's the limit? And I'll get into that in a minute, because there are things that do not qualify and some of those would seem to fit under hand assembled. Okay. So anyway, if you take the raw materials and you make the beads, okay, and then you make the jewelry, that's handcrafted. If you go to the store and you buy the raw materials that you consider raw materials, but you didn't actually make them, but they're beads, they're commercially available. You bought them, so they're commercially available. And then you made the thing, that's hand assembled. Again, don't overthink this, okay? It's all under the made by seller. It should all show up under made by seller when it shows on your listing. The last thing in this, I am going to do a separate video about Etsy's AI policy. Because I think, oh no, it's not on this, but I am going to do a separate video about this. This is items produced using computerized tools. Okay. Physical items that a seller produced in their personal shop. So you have the tool at your home, at your shop, at your workshop, wherever it is. And it's laser printers, 3D printers, CNC or Cricut machines, any kind of machine that you have at your disposal that you can walk up to and use yourself. These are items produced using computerized tools. These do fall under the made by a seller because you are doing the work, okay? You're not outsourcing it. You're not sending it to someone else to do the machine. If you are physically touching the machine, then it does count as made by seller. These items may be produced based on a seller's original design or using a templated design or pattern and are often personalized or customized to a buyer's specification. So it says that you can design the things or you can use templated design or patterns, which I would assume to be SVGs and images that you buy, that kind of stuff. And they are often personalized or customized when a customer sends in personalization. Okay. So the example of this is clothing embroidered by a seller using a computerized embroidery machine, tumblers decorated with vinyl stickers printed by a Cricut machine. Now this is the tricky one. Okay. And wedding invitations designed by a seller using software and printed onto stationery using a laser printer. Now, this is where the overlap starts happening, because a lot of people will buy stickers and put them on a tumbler. That does not count as a made by seller. Okay, that would be maybe hand assembled, or that wouldn't be items produced using computerized tools. See, this is where it gets a little funky. Commercially available supplies or components that a seller attached together to create a unique end product. All right, so how unique does it have to be? Because in the things that they say you cannot sell, these are examples of items that do not qualify. is adding a simple stick-on adornment such as commercially available sticker, stamp, or rhinestone to a commercially available base item. So that means that if I take a tumbler and put a sticker on it that I bought, I can't sell that, okay, because it doesn't change the function of the tumbler. But is that an original item? Is that something that is original? It's not something that you might be able to buy in a store. So, and this is where people are going to be very confused. I think that Etsy might clarify this as time goes on and they get feedback, because they have said we're going to be clarifying this, or they didn't say that. They say we're going to be making some changes, which who knows what that means. Don't start blaming Josh for this. I've seen Josh does not go into Etsy in the morning and say, this is what we're going to do. This has been gone over by tons of people. I have no doubt. This is in their legal. Okay. This is not something that Josh came up with on his own. This has been crawled over by tons of people. He did not come up with this on his own. Okay. So don't say, oh, we need to talk. No, it's not him. This is done by committee. Okay. But this is the thing though, that is going to cause people some concern, because how much do you have to do to have something be altered enough that it is not violating this, right? But I mean, some of this is pretty clear and some of it is a little, but I would say basically, if you are taking something and making it into something else, like if it has a different function, if it has a unique design that you created, if you created the design, then it's okay. If you cut out that sticker using a Cricut because you designed the sticker, or I guess if you bought the sticker, but you cut the sticker out yourself, you didn't go buy it in a store, then that's okay. All right. If you designed a wedding invitation and then you printed it onto stationery yourself, then it falls into the made by a seller. Okay. If it's digital, it's different, but it's okay if you printed it, because if you have your hands on the product, then it's probably going to be in the made by a seller category somewhere. But this is a little bit tricky to me, but that's the one thing. Also not allowed are items assembled by a seller per the manufacturer's instructions. So you can't go to get an IKEA table and put it together and then sell it. You can't put Lego sets together and then sell it as is, because that was just, you're following instructions. You're not really assembling anything. Okay. So now another thought just came to mind. If you buy a pattern and you make the pattern, are you now you're not allowed to sell it, because that's assembling per the manufacturer's instructions. I don't know how that works. I don't know how they're going to police this. I don't know how they're going to police this, but see, these are the kinds of questions that come up, and these are the kinds of questions that they'll have to address. I would not be surprised if these get added to and amended as time goes on. And they change their policies all the time, as we saw yesterday, that this was a big change. So these are examples of items that qualify as made by a seller. Handcrafted bowl, hand altered t-shirt. See, this one has a little embroidery on it that was made by someone's hand. Hand assembled keychain. They've taken commercial components, put them together. Wood decor made by a seller using automated tools like a laser cutter, and a bust made by a seller using automated tools by like a 3D printer. Okay, so again, this is the kind of thing, like if you bought a pattern, or if you bought the instructions and the thing for I don't know how 3D printers work, but I know you have to put in, like, you have to tell the printer what to do. If you bought that and then you have your 3D printer printed out, does that count? Is that allowed? Or are you assembling it per the manufacturer's instructions? See, this is the kind of thing that's going to be a little dicey, and I don't know the answer to that. So Etsy's going to have to clarify that. If you're not sure, then just make a change. Make some kind of a change to the pattern, and then it's not the original pattern and you're not following the manufacturer's instructions, and technically you can say that it's not 100% falling under this, because that's a little sticky to me. Okay. Examples of items that do not qualify as made by a seller are a commercially available face mask with a single sticker added, okay, and a Lego set assembled according to the manufacturer's instructions. But again, Um, at what point does this become a hand assembled item if it's commercially available supplies or components, and then you cover the mask with stickers? How many stickers does it have to be a unique end product? Because this seems to contradict this a little bit. Like, what's the limit, right? So there are questions about this, but in general, I think that most people could find your products in this section somewhere, and you don't have to overthink it. All right. So if you have questions about this, I might not be able to answer them. I doubt that Etsy support will be able to answer these very specific questions. And if you do have feedback, I'll try to find the link to if I remember, I'll try to find the link to the survey, and you can send that in. And Etsy is probably going to be looking at this and making slight tweaks and changes, like I said. So please send the feedback in if you have questions like that. But I'm going to stop this share, and I will do the next section. I'm going to do is the design by, because that's really tricky. And a lot of people are finding out that their items that they thought they made are now going to be considered design by. And that's just how it is. Again, this is the system now. So we have to learn to live with it. Okay, give this video a thumbs up and watch the next one next.